What up, everyone? This is Mr. Lord Dark Professor Dark Joker with this week's video. This week we'll be we'll go over a theory regarding the gods within Song of Ice and Fire series. Basically, I'm going to explain what each god is, what's known about them, what's theorized within the universe about them, and my theory about how they affect, everything within the series. With all that being said, on with the video. First off, I'm going to explain all the different gods that exist within A Song of Ice and Fire. R'hllor, so he's also known as the Lord of Light, the Heart of Fire, the God of Flame and Shadow. Now, he's primarily worshipped in Essos, and basically a lot of the Red Priests and the Shadows serve him. So, you know, Melisandre, the Red Priest that, was with Stannis Baratheon, then that Shadow that they conceived, you know, in, you know, in Clash of Kings. And then, yeah, so basically, he's like seen by a lot of people as like a good god, the good god within like, basically within the series. And like, that's what, so, the Azor Ahai prophecy is heavily associated with him. Yeah. The Great Other. He's also known as the Other, the Lord of Darkness, the Soul of Ice, and the God of Night and Terror. He's the enemy of R'hllor. His true name, whatever it is never spoken. And it's believed he's associated with the Others, or as people who've watched the TV show know them as, the White Walkers. So the Great Other technically is kind of, I wouldn't say he's necessarily like the Night King, but basically he's like the closest thing, one of the closest thing in the books that come through like what we know as the Night King in the show. The seven who are one. So these are basically like, the new gods that you hear about in the show and the book. So of course you had, when they swear, I swear by the old gods and the new. The seven who are one are the new gods. And it's called Seven Over One because this God has seven faces. You have the Father who represents judgment, the Mother who represents mercy, the Warrior who represents courage, the Smith who represents strength, the Maid who protects women, the Crone that represents wisdom and guidance, and the Stranger that guides people to the afterlife. And the Stranger is the only one that people don't pray to. So they pray to the other six, just not the Stranger. It's because they're afraid of the stranger. And basically, this is the dominant religion in Westeros, especially in the southern kingdoms. And basically, the Septums, they serve the seven who are one. And basically, this was brought into Westeros when the Andals, came to Westeros. They brought the religions. That's why they were called the new gods, because basically, the old gods were worshipped throughout at Westeros, and new gods basically replaced the old gods in a lot of people's minds. The old gods. Now, these gods don't necessarily have any other names known. They're just called the old gods. So they were mainly worshipped in the north and beyond the wall. And they're, primarily worshipped by, the first men and the children of the forest. And, basically, current day within the books, you know, it's mainly wildlings and a lot of the northern nobles that worship them. And so, the old gods are heavily associated with the weirwood trees, where a lot of important conversations have happened. It's like, yeah, weirwood trees have been where a lot of stuff happens. Of course, there's a lot of mystical stuff with them, with Harrenhal being made out of weirwood trees, and basically a bunch of them were torn down and all that, which that's why there's a curse associated with it. And yeah, that this is one like there's not a lot that's known about them. Like their names are never given. I'm sure they have names, they're just never said for whatever reason. But yeah, but yeah, these basically this is like a lot of the ones you see as like the old, like I swear by the old gods anew. These are the old gods. The drowned god. So this is god that's primarily worshipped at the Iron Islands. He allegedly created the Ironborn and then set up the Old Way, as the Ironborn call it, which is basically like in order to control like the earth and the waters. Basically the Old Way was all the plundering, pillaging that the Ironborn would do. Basically, they're like pirates. Basically, they're pirates. All what they do. So with the salt wives, how like to you know plunder, pillage, do things that raiders do. And yeah, that is all believed to have been taught by the drowned god, the storm god. So this god is the enemy of the drowned god, and believed to lure Ironborn to their doom, and hence the name creates a bunch of storms. And the god's hand is the sigil for House Kinning in Harlow, and ravens serve him, and it's believed that Euron Greyjoy and some warlocks with him, it's believed that they did some blood sacrifices for the storm god before, one of Euron's voyages, for safe passage. Mother Royne. So this is a goddess that, historically has been worshipped by the Rhoynar who live in Dorne. Now, this goddess is heavily associated with River Rhoyne, which is in Essos. And so, like, this basically is from, like, before, like, they settled Dorne. And then there's these giant turtles called the Old Man of the River that are believed to serve as consorts for this goddess. And current day in the book, she is still worshipped by the orphans of the Green Blood, who are kind of treated as outsiders by a lot of the people in Dorne. The Black Goat. So this god is worshipped in the free city of Qohor, and he serves as a banner for the brave companions, and heavily associated with blood sacrifice. Lion of Night and the Maiden Made of Light. Now these two gods are worshipped in Yi basically. So they fathered the god of Earth, who started the great empire to dawn, one of the really ancient empires within A Song of Ice and Fire. Like basically like a very very big empire, like fell apart, due to the long night. Now it preceded the Golden Empire. So the Golden Empire is like different one. The Great Empire of the Dawn is like a and like very poor one, because so like basically so the god was like basically a god called like, and you had all these like successors, like we don't know their names, like their names have not been revealed to us. George R. R. Martin might know their names, but you had different, you had the Pearl Emperor, Jade Emperor, Tourmaline Emperor, the Onyx Emperor, Topaz Emperor, Opal Emperor, and Fear. So basically, one of the things that possibly happened. So one of these two gods descendant, you know, called the Bloodstone Emperor, you know, the you know, so usurped his sister, the Amethyst Empress, who was ruling the empire at the time. Basically, he usurped her, took over, and was like the last emperor of this empire. And it's believed that the Long Night possibly was caused by his betrayal. Many faced God. So this is a god that's worshipped by the faceless men in Bravos, and they believe that death is like an end to suffering. And the faceless men believe that the stranger, black goat, and lion of the night are alternate identities for the many-faced god. Now I'm going to get into my theories regarding, all the gods in Song of Ice and Fire. So I think the Storm God and the Maiden May of Light are all aliases for R'hllor. And I think the Drowned God, Mother Ruin, Seven Who Are One, Lion the Night, Many-Faced God, and the Black Goat are all aliases for the Great Other. And I think the Old Gods and the Dragons all serve R'hllor. So like the dragons are basically like like heralds that and with the dragon riders being kind of like I guess like the judge, kind of like a judge from the Bible in a sense. And then the old gods are kind of like angels, like more like evil angels, because I think all the gods they're all freaking evil. I mean, it's a George R. R. Martin story. I don't think anyone should be surprised that if they're all evil. And I think Euron Greyjoy seeks the power of both gods in order to become king of Westeros and probably of Bravos and Essos as well. He basically probably wants to he's gone around the world plundering all that. He probably wants to rule it all, and he believes he needs the power of both gods to do it, which could explain some of the vision of him having like a tentacle face, which probably would symbolize maybe the drowned god since he's Ironborn. Then you have the Shadow Woman next to him, which might be Cersei. That might be Cersei Lannister, with her being his queen. And basically, he wants to use her as his queen while they start a new like Empire of the Dawn to like replace the two main gods, which kind of like how the Long Night, probably how the Long Night happened, the first go around, way back before the books start. And then I think the Three-Eyed Raven, which current one's Brendan Rivers, next one is Bran Stark, is an avatar for R'hllor, while Arya Stark will end up becoming an avatar for the Great Other. With Arya being, the Faceless Man, if the many-faced god is an alias for the Great Other, Arya basically is serving the Great Other, while Bran Stark being the next Three-Eyed Raven will basically be serving R'hllor. So you have two Starks on different sides. Like the Starks are obviously going to be very important to the end game of the books. Assuming George actually finishes them, which he won't. And then of course, at least with how Jon Snow will be involved. I'm going to try to cover that how Jon Snow is involved in a later video. And of course, you have the whites, fire white, ice whites, fire whites with the ice whites, serving the Great Other, fire whites serving R'hllor. And I mean, they each have their own, objectives as well. And, we've all seen, Lady Stoneheart, how, yeah, what's all happened with her. And now, how I think the first Long Night happened was the Great Empire of the Dawn turned against R'hllor and the Great Other. Basically, you had the Emperor, once he became Emperor, said, "I'm God now. I don't need you to. I want, I wanted he basically wanted to lead humanity against the gods and basically usurp them as God." And that pissed both of them off, and that led to them starting the Long Night as a way to punish humanity. Now the Long Night, that eventually there were disagreements, I believe, between R'hllor and the Great Other over how to handle humanity, how they handle the Long Night. So R'hllor wanted to use the Long Night to enslave humanity, while the Great Other wanted to use it to destroy humanity. And that led to a long-term conflict between them. Basically, about all of history and games, it's almost like a lover spat, is what it is, in a sense. Now between deities, so even in mythology, whether it's in fiction, where it's traditional fiction, where it's in mythology, different stuff. Love spats between deities uh, can cause a lot of problems for people. So like, and since they're basically immortal, they can hold grudges for a very long time. And so the reason why the seasons are so inconsistent is basically it has to do with the conflict between the two gods. And then the Grand Maester conspiracy, which that's a theory that the Grand Maesters wanted to destroy all the dragons and all that. Basically, part of my theory is that it's true, and the Great Other was the one who inspired it to them in order to destroy, R'hllor sorcerers because the Maesters don't like magic, and to get rid of the dragons because dragons are seen as like magic. Basically, the Maesters wanted to get rid of the sorcerers and the dragons, and the Great Other was the one who wanted them to do that because that's less servants for R'hllor. And that's it. Do y'all agree with my theories regarding the gods in A Song of Ice and Fire? Do you have other theories? You know, do you think like basically none of these gods exist within the confines of the Game of Thrones universe? Of course, these are all fiction in real life. Like, do you think like basically none real? Do you think there's only one? Do you think like basically they're all real? They're all completely unique characters that are all just like different conflicts with each other, different factions. Basically, there's like an iron throne of gods that basically is just, and basically the humanities version is just a smaller version of that. Who knows? Like, there's a lot of stuff that could be going on. But yeah, what do you think? Do y'all like this theory video? And like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, and look forward to the next video.